Welcome back, folks. Welcome back to another installment in the Philosophy Club Radio Hour. Wow, tumultuous times, folks. Tumultuous times from here in KDUX Studio. Shout out to our former engineer slash producer slash magic man, Jack Fletcher. We wish you all the best as you pursue new endeavors. Always be a special place in the heart of the Philosophy Club for you, my friend. But okay, yeah, so they management finally listened to me, and they let that slacker go. So here we are on our own, folks. So yeah, this is the Philosophy Club Radio Hour, broadcasting live from KDUX Studios. Live, wink, wink. Every Monday at 1 p.m., we come together to discuss all things philosophy. Well, not all things. Specifically, we recap last week's meeting of the Philosophy Club proper. The Philosophy Club proper meets every Wednesday at 1 p.m. in Nutchie's Hall, room 133. I have to pay attention to the levels now. I think I'll just scream into the mic. So yeah, please come by and check us out. All the topics are student suggested. Last week's topic was the emotions. Next week's topic is anxiety. As you can see, one topic kind of gives rise to the next based on the organic nature of the conversations themselves. So yeah, I guess what we'll do, we'll start with introductions, and then we'll kind of do a little recap, the re-quack, or the quack back, I think from last time.
Quack back, yes.
Shout out Tiffany. And yeah, we'll kind of also anticipate what kinds of subtopics might come up next week, given the broad topic of anxiety. Great. Now, I'm Professor Manzi, faculty advisor of the co-faculty advisor of the Philosophy Club. I got a couple of guests in the studio today.
All right.
Yeah, let's kick it over to my co-advisor.
Yes, this is your co-advisor, Professor Ulrich. I'm excited to be here for another week, another installment of the radio show, and I have two of my students here. Professor Manzi, where are your students this week?
Can we cut his mic? Well, again, there were questions over whether or not today's show is going to happen, given the circumstances, and so I kind of said, if you're hanging around for this, maybe just go home because we don't know if it's happening or not. But it's happening, and now they're missing out. Sorry, students. Right. Wow.
And before introductions go, I just want to say that this is a laid-back radio show. Just enjoy speaking about things that you want to speak upon, and we're talking about anxiety, so a little bit of studio anxiety is normal. So I will pass it to my right if you want to introduce yourself, and just say your name and anything about yourself, maybe what your major is, and why you're here today.
Yeah, if you're involved in any other clubs or organizations you want to plug, feel free to reference those too.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Professor Luke.
Yes.
It's awesome. Thank you for actually having me here, because I never knew this was here, and I like to speak out. So, but I'm a student here. I'm a student as well for a professor's class. I'm majoring in business accounting, so I'm hopefully travel with that, see where that takes me. This is my last year as well, and Professor actually introduced this to me, so it's actually an eye-opener as well too. So. Because it does open connections as well for accounting, so it does help a lot.
I think so. What's your name again?
Carlos.
Hi,
My name is Carlos.
Yes. Welcome. And then who do we have next to you?
So my name is Jem. Well, that's not my name, but that's what I go by. So, yeah. I'm majoring in psychology, so, the topic of anxiety kind of goes a lot into it. And, yeah, I'm also one of Professor Luke's students, and I just decided to give it a try and see what happened. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's great to have both of you in the studio, for sure.
Yeah.
And, I recommend you attending the Philosophy Club as well if you can make it. It's a lot of fun. And so what this is basically like a little micro version of what the Philosophy Club meetings usually are. At the Philosophy Club meetings, we usually have around 25, 35 people. And in the studio, we break it down to 4 to 6, something like that, to keep it coherent. So, here we are. Now, let's do a little bit of re-quacking here. And then, of course, our guests, feel free to weigh in at any time. Feel free to interrupt me. It's totally cool. You won't be allowed back, but you can do it today. I'm joking, of course. None of us will be allowed back. So, yeah, now this topic, the emotions, came from the week prior's topic, which was, again, how has the pandemic impacted notions of friendship and belongingness? And so that gave rise to questions of what role should the emotions play in our average everyday life? Are emotions something to be considered as, I suppose, vulnerabilities or maybe liabilities that you have to sort of overcome and kind of command so that, the emotions aren't leading you, you're leading them? Or are emotions, maybe less volatile or maybe less, deteriorating of our otherwise rational plans, and maybe emotions play more of a formative and pivotal role in our experiences. So perhaps, for example, some of the most, cherished sacred moments in your life are characterized not by sort of how you handled your emotions, but sort of letting the emotional experience wash over you in a way that makes you feel, again, connected to the moment, or even just ecstatic, you might say. So the conversation itself, and Luke, you could testify to this. It did take some interesting twists and turns in the meeting.
Yes, it did.
Especially when it came to, our relationship to our own emotions, which is to say, our relationship to ourselves. So you know what? I guess let me. So you've now entered the re-quack, folks. Quack. We call it the re-quack because we recap the meeting, and we are Thunder Ducks, and Ducks quack.
That's right.
So, well, let me ask y'all, Carlos and Jem, what do you feel? What do you feel about feelings? Do you think the emotions are things that maybe get in the way, or do you think emotions are a vital part of our experiences?
You can take this one, Jen.
I mean, I feel like emotions are what let us interact with other people, because like otherwise, like it would just be a very monotonous conversation and stuff, and we really wouldn't get anywhere with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd just be exchanging information with no sort of, vivacity to it. Okay.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, it was kind of partial as that. I would just say if, as long they move you, I mean, sometimes, I've had experience with this, or, women tend to have more emotions, and they tend to think a lot more than the men throughout the day, so, and sometimes they'll take us or they'll move us, and if we don't control those thoughts, then we tend to focus on the past, or we tend to fall on those emotions because, feelings or moments, and so sometimes it'll be helpful or not.
Yeah. Okay. So it kind of depends on the context.
Yes.
Excuse you, Professor Ulrich. Yeah. So that's
I
interesting.
get blamed for everything.
That's interesting because somebody clean these mics. It's interesting because, you bring up, maybe emotions are more tied to the feminine, and so maybe therefore rationality and a control of emotions are maybe associated with more masculine attributes. But I think we could sort of challenge that in a little bit, insofar as, emotions are so universal. They touch all of human existence. And I think you could even go so far as to say, or we could talk about this, you can go so far as to say that it's impossible to be conscious, to be awake, and not be experiencing some emotion, not necessarily intensely, but, can you imagine, or can you think of any moment in time where you were awake and you weren't feeling some kind of emotion?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. It gets to something that I used to think of it as an overstatement of the case, that when I say it in class. When I say something, I say there is no experience that's not emotional. But I've come to actually agree with that statement. So even you're saying, even if it's a low level emotion or sometimes a high level of emotion, all experiences are emotional. Sometimes even, when we think that we're neutral, we think that that's not being emotional, but that neutrality is an emotion. That ability to feel sustained and everything is okay, that's an emotional state.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that, because, as you say, emotion just saturates all aspects of our existence, it's kind of like we can't step out of the cubicle. So sometimes we could be in a sort of, maybe moderate or tepid emotional state and not even realize we're experiencing an emotion or having an emotion. It's the way we be, in a Heideggerian way. Yeah, and so, this gives rise to other questions. So something like, because now you can say, okay, emotions are necessary. They're a necessary part of everything. But then when I think of things that, like, I need, out of necessity. And experiences or feelings that come with that, I think of things like hunger, thirst, sleepiness, or drowsiness. Now, these aren't emotions, but we feel them, and they affect our emotions in a way that I think maybe can exacerbate them and then make our emotions a problem. So it does seem like if you're distracted by sort of bodily needs, again, I'm so tired, I can't think, I can't, somebody wants to have a big, deep conversation with you when you're exhausted, you're not trying to have that conversation. You're like, I'm emotionally spent, you might say. I'm emotionally exhausted. So it does seem as though we are emotional inherently and just completely, but we also have this weird ability to be able to step back from our emotions. So we could be feeling anger, and at the same time, we could step back from ourselves and say, why am I feeling anger right now? Which is bizarre. It's just like you can literally distance yourself from yourself when questioning yourself about how you're feeling yourself.
Very strange. Almost as if we're floating next to ourselves and kind of taking account of our own emotional experience at the time. It's like, why am I feeling so angry? Well, where am I? Why am I floating next to myself, thinking about myself? It is kind of a strange experience that you're talking about.
Yeah, and usually I think when that happens, it's happening because we're confused about our emotions, or we're just not exactly sure. Like, not to say that there's a problem, but they're not gelling with how we expect to feel. Maybe that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So sometimes you could feel feelings and not question them because they feel appropriate and they feel natural. But maybe when you're feeling things you don't expect to feel, that's when you begin to objectify the feelings themselves and say, why am I feeling this way? What is it about what's happening right now that's causing me to experience an emotion that I did not anticipate? Which would then seem to conclude, well, you're not in control of your emotions. Sometimes you don't even know why you're experiencing them.
Very, and this, I think this gets us to our topic,
Okay.
which is that experience of anxiety.
Right.
Does seem to be this strange not knowing what your body is doing or not understanding what's going on in your environment, not feeling comfortable in control of yourself or your environment, and it causes that strange feeling which we call anxiety. Maybe we can take a second to think about what is the feeling of anxiety like?
Yeah. Which is hard to do because nobody wants to feel it.
Mm-hmm. I know, yeah, I at least know I don't like it.
Exactly. It's painful. Yeah, well, that's a great talking point here. What do we mean when we say anxiety? Maybe it's one of those words where you hear it a lot, and people will use it when describing experiences. But if you ask somebody to sit down and define it, that might be tough to do. Can anybody define anxiety for me?
Yeah, and by defining, I think Jeff also, he means, define the experience. Tell us what the experience is like.
Can you articulate it?
When you're going through it, how would you tell another person what that experience is like? Any of y'all have any?
Oh man, it's like a roller coaster. I mean, how do you know a roller coaster is fun or scary? I mean, what if it's just all fun, or if it's all scary? So
Yeah.
in order for that, I mean, one is the Ring of Fire, like a roller coaster. It goes in circles, and you're upside down, and you just, at times before I feel it, I mean, I don't deal with it, but sometimes it will kick in. It will come in with worry or with procrastination. So, but you just, I guess it's just when you don't know what to do in the moment, you tend to feel that you just get like you're screaming inside, and I know it's not me, but
Yeah.
I think it's just not probably being in control. Yeah, something that either you don't recognize, so it kind of just sneaks up on you, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that. I like that ability of not recognizing, not an ability, but the phenomenon of not realizing necessarily why I feel anxious. I think that's something that maybe a lot of people can relate to. It does remind me of this distinction that's made between anxiety and fear. I think I referenced this at the end of the last meeting, which is every Wednesday at 1 p.m. and NetJuice 133.
Good plug.
Yeah. Check us out on social media, too, folks. We're all over social media. Facebook, Twitter. What's the other one? Instagram. Come find us. Join us. Be our friends. is this idea of taking on an object. So, and we could talk about this. I mean, I'm not necessarily sold on this, but this is the idea that when you're afraid of something, that when you fear something, that fear has a particular object, and when the object is gone, or when the event passes, the fear attached to that object or event is gone. So if you're really nervous about taking an exam, and you're afraid you're going to fail, and you're afraid you're going to maybe lose your scholarship or lose your standing in the class, maybe you're on academic probation, you're really worried about the test. But then once the test is over, even if you don't know if you did well on it or not, it's over. And so now you feel relieved. You're no longer afraid of taking the test because it's gone. And so your fear of that is gone. Anxiety perhaps is something a bit more elusive. So perhaps anxiety doesn't take a particular object. You might say, I have anxiety over the test, and that's fine. And I'm drawing on the 20th century existentialists here. But perhaps it's that anxiety is something that doesn't necessarily have a particular object, but you're always feeling anxious. And that's part of why you can't recognize why you're feeling anxious. Is because I can't really point to any one thing. I just feel this general sense of Angst. Again, the German term. And so that begs the question, well then, what is the source of anxiety? And here's what I want to, put over for your consideration. People like Heidegger, people like Sartre, they argue that anxiety is just what it means to be human. That human beings, by nature, we have, again, the German term is Sorge, S-O-R-G-E. It means care or concern, translated roughly. So human beings, by nature, we're concerned about things. Usually, things involving ourselves, our lives, our projects, our future, our goals, what we hope to become, things like that, combined with the understanding that we will one day die. And so there is a distinct possibility that we won't realize our goals, we won't realize our aspirations, even if we don't have any. We know that we want to aspire to something, and the concern that we may not make manifest whatever it is that we are seeking, it kind of just remains with us until time is up. Do you think that's fair? Do you think that anxiety is just part of what it is to be a human being, and attempts to quell anxiety won't really work because you're basically trying to deny how we be, what we are as a human being? Or do you think that anxiety is something that you can permanently alleviate, maybe chemically?
Well, actually, no, because, I mean, if you was, I mean, let me see how I had it right now, but
he got anxious.
Anxiety doesn't, yeah. It kicked in, I spoke, and it just popped. Yeah, it went away. But anxiety is something that you can actually overcome. I mean, it's nothing, it's not natural. It doesn't happen naturally. I mean, fear or something like that, that's not natural. It's not natural to just feel that way, or like when worry, when that happens, it's you plan ahead. And like as you were saying about the test, if you was to plan ahead, I don't think you would probably fear or feel anxious that you're gonna either fail or pass, as long as you know that you did something ahead of it, which is confronting it. You would not feel anxious. And if you was to take that upon yourself of thinking you're in your own authority, knowing that you would know how to handle it, then that would be wrong. Because how can we define actually being anxious, So if you was to, like, let's say when we ask a question to our parents when we don't know something, and when they explain something that sounds true, we tend to feel at ease. We calm down, and so our parents know. Someone in higher, I guess knowledge, would you say, Lucas? But
Yeah.
If you was to rely on someone,
It's Professor Lucas.
Professor Lucas.
I'm joking.
If you was to rely and put your trust into something higher that does know, then I don't think you would probably be feeling that way,
Yeah,
So
I think that's a good response.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I don't know. What do you think, Professor Lucas?
Well, first of all, I mean, it's really interesting getting into deep existential themes on the radio club hour.
Shout out human existence.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Getting into those in-depth emotions of general anxiety. I guess the thing that popped into my head was two things. Carlos was talking about it's not normal on the one hand, the possibility of okay, maybe it is part of human experience, and then of course what popped in my head is medication. This idea of
The pill popped in your head. Thank you, folks. That was a joke. Pun.
it's strange, right? Because if it isn't normal, then it seems as if a pill to alleviate that would bring us to normality. Whereas if it is normal, we would say, well, no, this is just part of existing. Feeling that anxiety, can even be a motivating factor of, it kind of, your body's kind of ready for action when you're in anxiety, ready to move, ready to do something. And so if we try to do away with that, would we do away with also some of our motivation for living life? That's what popped in my head.
Solid point.
I would understand that. That it goes back to that. It could go back to that, but it would, I guess, what was his name again?
Professor Menzies.
Professor Menzies, right?
Yes.
Correct. Okay, so for example, I'm sure you've dealt with certain, I guess, in your life of anxiety or in certain moments, right?
No, never.
No, never. Okay.
I'm always perfectly confident. No, I'm joking. Yeah, all the time. Right now, in fact.
So where has that led you in most of your life? Like what has it moved you?
Great question.
So where does it move? Does it move you into something good, or does it take you out into some action that you end up regretting later?
Yeah. Well, first of all, do we know what a vice is? No. I'm joking.
No.
Coping mechanism? No. No, I think that is an excellent question because on the one hand, well, first of all, going back to what Luke, you were saying,
Yeah.
I do like that take that, it's almost like maybe anxiety is this refined version of a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
Where it's like on some level we feel that we ought to be, I guess, concerned with our safety, however we define it. So it might even, it might have some sort of like, dare I say, like bodily muscle memory sort of indicators. It's sort of a parallel to that where it's like, okay, I don't know why I'm feeling anxious, but if I'm feeling anxious, it's because something's wrong.
Yeah.
It's almost an indicator to you. I like that. But then getting back to this question here, so I suppose it depends on, I guess, how we relate to our anxiety, which is to say how we relate to ourselves and in the world, which is the source of both our happiness and our misery. I could say personally, it's gone both ways. So sometimes I've experienced anxiety and it's resulted in almost like a paralysis of action, where I'm almost, this phrase gets used a lot, but maybe I feel like I'm overthinking things. And then I begin to, it's so funny. I'm looking at the camera right now, and I could see like Burger King advertisements. In them. Do you see that? It's distracting.
Oh yeah.
For the good people at home, it's Arby's,
Arby's,
which is actually superior to Burger King in my opinion. Shout out Arby's. They're not a sponsor, but
We would love them to be a sponsor.
We
so
would.
Arby's, if you're listening.
Well, I'll change the name of the show to Beef and Cheddar Radio Hour. Okay. We're losing the students. Okay, so I guess one of two ways. On the one hand, yes, the anxiety can be paralyzing. It can be arresting to the point where maybe this is getting us back on track for things like, medication, prescriptions, to maybe, I guess, I don't want to say remove your anxiety, but make your anxiety appear manageable for the sake of acting. On the other hand, and this is, I think, more to your point, Carlos, sometimes having anxiety has been a motivator that's resulted in positive outcomes for me, where I don't want to say channel it, but the anxiety kind of reminds me of what I think is important. And so, oftentimes when people are like, I'm anxious and I don't know why, and I hear that a lot from people, my family, my friends, my significant others, everybody in my life, I've come to find that maybe it's because those people who are feeling anxious aren't necessarily aware of what it is that's important to them. And so the anxiety, I think, circles around things that are of importance to you. So this idea that we always live with anxiety, that's kind of tantamount to saying, well, there's always things that matter to us. There are always things that we're concerned about, always people we could worry about. But more specifically, I think when you kind of use it as a self-reflection, and you're saying, why am I anxious about my life? Is it because things aren't going well? Is it because things are going well, but I don't really like what I do? and I'm starting to realize I might have to do this thing that I don't enjoy for the rest of my life. I think that's I would say the best kind of impact it could have is it causes you to self-reflect, almost like midlife crisis style, where you're like, is this really what I want? Am I happy with who I've become? Am I pursuing goals that are mine, or am I pursuing goals that my family told me to pursue, my church told me to pursue, whatever the case may be?
Right. Yeah.
I just talk until somebody else talks.
No, I was just thinking about what you had to say about this. It shows, and it goes back to what we were originally talking about. The anxiety is always connected to something that we care about.
Yeah.
And
Sorge.
it goes back to the sorge. The question that popped in my head is, okay, I know I really don't care right now. I mean, I probably shouldn't admit something like this, but I really don't care, like, what's going on, like, in Papua New Guinea or something, right? It doesn't have a place in my head.
It doesn't reach you.
Yeah, and because it doesn't have a place in my head, I have no anxiety over it. And so what you're saying does seem to be correct, that if I'm having anxiety over something, it's because I really care about that thing, and it's causing that general anxious feeling inside of me because there's something I care about. And I guess that means we need to start getting reflective about the things we care about.
Yeah. And then tying it back to what Carlos said, it's also, I care about this thing and I can't control how it's going to work out. So that, again, that lack of control is really, it's distressing. Yeah, I mean, so that's not to say you couldn't care for things that are happening in Papua New Guinea if somebody were to bring it to your awareness.
Right.
And then I guess it's up to you whether or not you decide to care. But yeah, I mean, look, I drive by an O'Reilly body parts shop all the time on the way to school. I never worry about the employees in that shop, how their families are doing, how their pensions are working out. Because, again, that's not where my sphere of concern isn't there. My sphere of concern is here at a place like Dallas College, because what I care about is being able to talk about philosophy until my face is blue. And that's what kind of led me here. And so the people that I interact with that are in my, again, sphere of concern are those that are directly tied back to my own personal aspirations and therefore my own sense of who I am by what it is I do the most often. So I don't think, in other words, what I'm trying to say is it's not necessarily a bad thing to only have anxiety over a few things. In fact, that might be what is kind of what happens naturally, which is to say, well, actually, I'll pose this to you as sort of a hypothetical. Have you ever met people who they really, 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 really care about a cause that doesn't seem to have anything to do with them, but then, personally speaking, their own life isn't together? You ever meet somebody like that?
I'll let anybody want to comment on that? Because I think there's something interesting going on in that question.
I do too. Well, okay, Carlos, let me ask you directly. And again, no, okay, you don't have to sort of respond if you don't want to. But who do you think is more intelligent based on this conversation? Me? No, I'm joking. No, I was going to say this. So, Carlos, have you ever had a cause that was of deep concern that wasn't necessarily impacting you, like on a local level? Like maybe it's like you're worried about like famine or water shortage or the environments and pollution and stuff like that. And at the same time, it almost serves as a distraction for dealing with more personal issues like getting your money in order or passing your classes or making sure your car works. And I bring this up for the following reason. It does seem interesting that sometimes human beings have this ability to decide what we are going to feel anxious over, which is a weird thing because anxiety seems to be something that seizes you. Like at a certain point, okay, Carlos doesn't know. I just keep talking. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just waiting for you. I'm just waiting for you to just finish.
That's shut up. Okay, I'll stop.
No, not that way.
No, you can tell me.
Well, I want to go back. I guess back to the car shop. I mean, until that's probably the only car shop left. I mean, you are going to be worrying about those people.
Yeah,
that's the point.
Yeah.
But right now, you probably won't be thinking about it. But well, I think there's a difference between actually than something we can control than something we cannot. Because, I mean, why should I worry if a tsunami or something actually like that, a water shortage or something like that could happen? I mean, I mean, if I can figure out how to fix it, then maybe okay. But
Yeah.
I should not worry about it. I mean, either you come in or you leave. It's just like death. You either come in and you die. And, well, I don't know. Just keeps going on. Whatever, you got to move on.
Yeah.
And but I think there's more to it. But at this moment, back to that question. But yeah, if I could only control it, then yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
I like what you have to say a lot, and it's also, again, building on your point. It's like, okay, I mean, if there was suddenly this spike in global warming and I can't fix it, but it's still going to impact me. It's like, yeah, I care about it and I worry about it, but I'm not like anxious over it. What I might be anxious over is if the global warming impacts my livelihood, so now I can't provide for my family.
Right.
So my anxiety comes from my family, not so much the globe and the future of the planet. But that's not to say that other people can't make that their primary concerns. But oftentimes when they do, they're really kind of devoting their life to it. They're advocates, or they're working for nonprofits and stuff like that. So there's a reflection of their values in their activities as well as in their concerns. But again, I want to push this idea of anxiety as being something that you can never get away from. That anxiety is a permanent fixture of human existence because humans, again, are permanently, I guess, valuing things. Picking up projects, picking up, again, paths to move forward, which implies a motivation to do so in the first place.
Well, and also, when you said it's something that we can't get away from, I of course, I think you mean that in an ultimate sense.
Yes.
And when I start thinking about, well, how do I get away from it? I just think, if I could just take a mundane example.
It is Monday.
It is.
Stupid.
A mundane example. I still remember in college when I would have a test, and I would just catch myself like cleaning my room. I was like, why am I cleaning my room?
Right.
For whatever reason, I didn't want to deal with the anxiety of studying and doing the things I knew that I had to do and get finished. But as long as I was doing something like cleaning, it seemed to alleviate that anxiety. There's a strangeness of the little mundane things that we'll do even to give ourselves some relief during the day.
Yeah, that's wild. Because I have the exact same experience, and because it's like, yes, it's important to me that I clean up my space. But then when the task becomes a bit more formidable than that, so preparing for an exam, which takes a lot more effort, I'd rather do the thing that's less requiring of effort, but nonetheless is progress.
It is progress. Yeah.
Yeah, that is odd, because look, we've seen a lot of ways over the course of human history where people do try to alleviate their anxiety. A lot of people will look to things like religion. For example, Buddhism and this notion of nirvana. There seem to be, let go of all things. Do not be, tied down to anything, because that's the source of your anxiety and fear. And when you could completely self-abnegate, you are no longer, shackled by the anxiety that comes with desiring. So are you familiar with that general idea? Not necessarily the pure Buddhist sense, but the notion of, if I cannot care about anything, if I cannot desire anything, then I will never feel anxiety again.
Right.
And that's somehow sublime. Does that sound desirable?
And strangely, we just read one of the Buddha's fire sermons in our class, I guess,
nice.
last week, talking about, yes, desire seems to be connected to that anxiety. It seems to be connected to our, when we talk about our quote-unquote problems in the world, we're always talking about things that we care about and the anxiety that comes along with them.
Yeah, and which again begs the question, how can you be alive and not care about things as a human? How's that even possible? How do you turn that off? Should you? If it's natural to care about things, why should you try to seek a supernatural way of living? I mean, why not just, and I think this is the existentialist point. It's not about alleviating permanently the anxiety, because that's impossible. And you can alleviate, little anxieties here and there. That's how we cope. But it's about just embracing the finality, the finitude of your existence, which means having to come to terms with the fact that anxiety is inevitable, because it's in our, I don't want to say nature, but it's in our mode of being to make plans, to have projects, to have goals or dreams or aspirations, and eventually your life will end. And so already I won't be able to accomplish everything I want to accomplish right off the bat.
And even outside of, I mean, of course that's correct from an individual point of view, but even taking the same insight and applying it to relationships and friendships, it also means that there's going to be anxiety in those. So there's no, sometimes I think when I hear people talk, they don't want anything bad in any friendships or any relationships that they have. But if general anxiety about life is true, then it's going to follow you, and it's going to follow you into every aspect of your life. I think we might have.
I thought you delivered pizza or something.
Delivering. We have a delivery, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what the delivery of. So
we got a seat over here and a seat over here.
you have to.
I thought he sneakily brought in food.
I think
Just in a bit.
We have 15 minutes.
Okay.
I just didn't. I wanted to make sure I wasn't keeping you longer than.
It's because I like it, but it's just you gotta.
That's okay.
There's a lot to
Here,
it.
you know what? Why
Yeah.
don't you go sit in there so you can hear the conversations? I don't think we
Jim,
have
how are you?
headphones for you.
Doing
but,
good?
But you can still talk to the microphone and we'll pick you up.
This is right in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
The anxiety.
You might
Do you have anything that you would like to say on that experience?
I mean, yeah, the whole time, but you know.
It's dead air, people.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah,
Hello.
feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, let us know who you are. Tell us
Same
about
thing.
yourself.
Okay, hi. I'm Skyla. Skyla French, actually.
Hello, Skyla.
Yeah. I'm an English major, planning on transferring. Sorry. Okay. Yeah.
That's why
So I'm actually in my ethics class, and my ethics professor dragged me along after asking for directions, which I kind of thank him for.
All right. So yeah, welcome to the studio. We got a couple more guests, and then Ashok, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Ashok. I teach ethics at Richland College. Feel free to drop in my ethics class and complain about anything you wish to complain about. I am happy to be a sounding board.
Okay.
Yeah. So welcome, y'all. It's great to have you here. And again, Professor Kara and I guess you were at the last philosophy club meeting. So we got 3 professors who were there, 3 students who weren't. That's funny. So what we're talking about right now is anxiety, which is, again, the topic for next week. So we're getting into these notions of, I guess, not just how to cope with anxiety on a practical level, but what it is on an ontological level, and how it sort of stems from a general consideration of the emotions. Now, okay, well, I guess I'll ask our new guests here, this notion of anxiety. Is it something that you think can be permanently overcome? Like, is that the goal, is to just get rid of anxiety so you can live a life anxiety-free? Or is anxiety something that's more of a permanent fixture in human existence, to the point where maybe it makes more practical sense to just accept it? And the way we are sort of tying that together is, again, drawing upon these existentialists who speak at length about anxiety as a philosophical phenomenon. Anxiety seems to be directly tied to the human inclination to, again, make plans, to desire, to try to envision oneself in a future context. And anxieties maybe tend to be tied to those future projects. Now, you might say, hang on a second, doesn't therapy suggest that you have anxiety based upon your past, not your future? And what do we make of that? So yeah, that's kind of, we're just throwing it out there. Do you have any thoughts on anxiety? Or do you feel as though anxiety is good for you or maybe bad for you? We could start there.
Yeah.
Anyone can speak.
Okay. To go back to, I want to just break it down a little bit more. Anxiety, whether or not the goal is to get rid of it fully or to live with it forever, that's, my personal opinion is that it's absolutely not trying to get rid of anxiety forever. That is not the goal. The goal is to, not in a sense control it, but to allow it to do its job. It's there for a reason. Absolutely. It was there for, like, if we talk even evolutionary, like in an evolutionary stance,
You're good. You're good. Keep going.
We,
yourself
sorry. It's been there for
You have to take 6.
Yeah.
Anxiety is there to help protect us from oncoming dangers and such, and having too much anxiety can pose a problem, yes, especially in today's society where, we're going through our life struggles, and sometimes we get all this anxiety bunched up, and it's just knowing how to let it out, how to let it go, and how to let it affect us healthily and such, rather than trying to get rid of it, because it's a part of us. And the first step, I feel like, in dealing with anxiety is just acknowledging that it is a part of us, and it's there for a reason to protect us. Yet a lot of society views anxiety, depression, and all such, everything else, as this attack onto our happiness. Yet how we have to think about this, or how we could think about this, is that anxiety is, or our happiness is not a constant state. The only constant thing in life is change. And we need to understand that our happiness will not last forever, and our sadness will also not last forever. Our anger, our anxiety, none of that will last forever. It goes through phases. We have ups and we have downs. Now, the goal, through my experiences, has been to have this line of medium. Think of it as like you're going on a roller coaster, and the higher you go is the happier you are, and the lower you go is the sadder you are. I've gone through phases in my life where I've gone to such highs, and then I've just crashed and burned so hard that it took a lot out of me personally, and how to kind of control that, and how to not crash and burn so hard also means that I need to not raise to such highs, and try to I'm trying to think of the term, but basically to control it, or to not controlling is the wrong word I'm trying to use, but
Like manage it.
yeah, manage it better, and such. And you want to stay kind of going up a little bit above the line that's smack in between bad, or not bad, but like negative and positive, and you're trying to just go a little bit above it and a little bit under it, and that creates peace. And I feel like the ultimate goal is to reach peace. That's just my 2 cents.
No, that was worth more than 2 cents for sure. No, I appreciate those thoughts. Yeah, right before y'all entered, we were talking about this idea of different sort of coping mechanisms, using that loosely, to deal with anxiety that seems to just be all pervasive. And again, we were discussing, certain particular religious inclinations for this. So this notion of, again, nirvana in Buddhism, it's I guess, promoting a self-abnegation, which is to say that the source of your anxiety and therefore your unhappiness is the fact that you desire. It's the fact that you want things, that you care about things, and if you can sort of remove any sense of desire, you can extinguish any sense of anxiety and therefore suffering, and that's how you reach, quote unquote, nirvana. Obviously, very cursory overview, and that's kind of an interesting juxtaposition with, again, what we were discussing earlier. These existentialist tenets, which argue, again, it's the mode of a human being is to always have things that you care about. And so long as you care, anxiety is going to be around. That's not to say that you have anxiety over this thing or that thing or this thing or that thing. It's just that you have an understanding that as long as I have goals, as long as I have aspirations, there's going to be anxiety that comes with that. And if it's human inclination to have goals and desires and plans, projects, then anxiety is just part and parcel with what it is to be human. So rather than try to sort of, and I like what you said, rather than try to sort of deny it or again, extinguish it or vanquish it, what one ought to do is manage it. Understand that it's part of what it is to care about things, to have anxiety over them. Yeah.
I think,
Do you want to say something?
I
Hey,
did
jump right in.
wanna-
Jump
yeah,
right
I did
in.
want to get right in here because I wanted to ask you guys how you were characterizing existentialist anxiety.
I gotta talk to these guys. I gotta be right back. But keep going.
Regarding existentialist anxiety, what I remember is a short paper by Heidegger, Heidegger's What is Metaphysics, in which he says anxiety is like when the beings, when you see the world around you slipping away, that you feel like, hey, you can't get a grip on anything. And I wanted to throw that back to all you guys. Like, how do we reconcile a more maybe fundamental anxiety, one where we're really worried about death or really worried that life in some fundamental sense is over, with the anxiety we think we can manage? How do you guys work that out?
I think that's a good question. So, yeah, there does seem to be different levels of anxiety, and we throughout have oh, you need headphones. We throughout this have been able to look at different type of ways of managing that. Skylar just told us. Sorry about that. Skylar just told us about kind of a stoic ideal, finding this middle ground, finding a way to not go to too high of extremes, because when you go to too high of extremes, you're gonna get a crash. But Ashok then brings up this idea of, well, there seems to be extremes of just human nature itself, and thinking of big themes like maybe death or something like this that is all pervasive, and maybe we can never get out of it. And I guess the question that came to my mind in thinking about it is, what do you do with the people that love those extremes? You know, especially as it does seem to be part of us as human beings. Like, when you're in that experience of extreme, it's just so enjoyable. And to kind of remove that from our experience, although you at the same time seem right that it would give us a mediating factor and it would help us balance life. But man, we love those extremes, and it does seem to be part of human to like want to put ourselves into those extremes too. But at the same time, you're right.
Are you sure?
You know, that the outcome of it is going to be more anxiety.
Not right now, but yeah, I will. For sure.
To go off of you, the goal, so I'm not trying to stop, or I'm not trying to control anyone, but
Right.
the process is also not to stop going. So whether you go high or go low, you know, sure, you want to like mediate it or manage it, so you don't go too far high to where when you crash,
Right.
it has dreadful consequences. That being said, those are the top extremes where we, how it was said with us humans, there are lots of humans out there who do like going to the extremes, and do enjoy that and such. And whereas if you mediate it, how I phrased it could have been interpreted as like you're just at peace and no other emotions, which isn't what I meant at all. While it could be taken that way, it could also be taken as you do get those happiness and proudness, those positive emotions going through. They just might not be as extreme as what you had before. Yet at the same time, if you're able to manage, the goal is to manage your sadness, because that's what humans have an issue with, right? They're in sadness, their anxiety. That's what they want to stop. They want to be happy all the time, or at least I did. And so the goal for me was to be able to manage my own sadness, my own anxiety, to the point where it would, to where I could handle it. So I still get sad. I still get anxious and stuff. I'm not trying to stop that. I'm just trying to have it be to get to a lower level that I can manage on my own.
Good. Yeah. No, I really like that answer.
Yeah, okay, so, yeah, and I'm glad you clarified that as well, because, again, when we talk about managing anxiety and stuff like that, I think you're right. Most people think, you know, that means trying to remove it as much as possible. But there is something to I guess, feeling, period. So, I mean, this might sound maybe a little perverse, but maybe you're going through a time where you're having a hard time just relating to your emotions. Maybe you feel, quote unquote, empty, or you feel as though you just can't relate anymore, maybe like robotic or like a zombie. And then when you start to get anxiety, you start to get like butterflies in your stomach because you're worried about something. That's actually kind of a nice feeling, because it's like, oh, I care about something again. It's welcome back, anxiety. Now I feel alive again because, I'm experiencing worry over something that I want to see happen, not happen. Do you follow? Like, it's kind of like anxiety could be an indicator that, maybe if you were aimless or directionless or purposeless, feeling that way, and then suddenly you're concerned over something, that lets you know, hey, I actually do have things in mind, and I actually am somebody who can be, I guess, committed to certain projects or values or whatever the case may be, to the point where it's going to emotionally affect me. And that's, I think for some people, that's like a breath of fresh air. What do you think? Can anxiety be good in that case?
Yeah, of course. I think anxiety is going to follow. Even low levels of anxiety are going to follow all of our actions and decisions and our general feeling about life. And I think Skylar gave a good argument for how she looks at managing those. And then at the same time, Jeff, talking about maybe even when we, it's strange. There's this yo-yo effect. As we manage it more and get better at it, we're like, maybe I want that. I want that anxiety back a little. Yeah, right. There is a strangeness to that. Yeah, I don't know exactly how to express that feeling, but that seems right.
Yeah, and just building on that, it does remind me of so let's say, for example, you're a musician or something like that, and you get really excited to play live performances, just to perform live and to play original songs, and it's really great, and you get nervous, get a little stage fright before every time you go up. And then at a certain level, the stage fright goes away just out of routine. You feel comfortable. And professors, we have this, in terms of lecturing. It's like, you do it a certain amount of times, you kind of you get a comfort level for it. You get a feel for it, and so there's less trepidation going into it. But then I wonder if you reach a point where it's like you're going up to perform your musical number or whatever the case may be, your original poetry, and you don't even feel the slightest bit nervous or the slightest bit excited. And you say to yourself, how come I'm not anxious at all right now? And that's an indicator like, oh, well, you know what? Maybe I just don't care about this anymore. And that in turn is an indicator to move on, as y'all said. So I do think anxiety, our inherent response is to try to deny it or run from it. But if you can sit and reflect on it, I think it's a very solid indicator of where you're at. Not in terms of like literally physically where you're at, but in terms of, am I happy with the life I'm leading so far? Do the values I held before, do they still obtain? Or have I moved on and I just can't admit it to myself? Or I'm afraid to.
It's interesting where we came. What was that thing called at the top of the house that people have? Is it a weather vane?
Oh yeah.
That tell the direction of the wind. So anxiety is our weather vane for life, telling the direction that we're blowing.
The inner storms.
Yeah, interesting.
Right on, folks. So okay, we're pushing up at 2:00, and there's another show. DJ Shockwave Dave's show is supposed to be coming on next. If you like alternative rock, check that out. We do have a few minutes left, though, so I kind of want to say, say our, goodbyes, our concluding thoughts, so to speak. And then, of course, once again, plug the Philosophy Club proper. The Philosophy Club proper meets every Wednesday at 1 p.m. in Netches Hall. That's Neches Hall, room 133. You can't miss us. We're a rowdy bunch. Come on down. It's very informal and yet deep conversation. If you're going to college, you're going to school here, and you have these questions, you have these feelings, maybe something like anxiety, and you just want to hear what other students your age are how they're dealing with this, what they think of it, what they make of it. Come down and join us. We talk about, again, all topics that are student suggested. We've done emotions. We've done a whole bag of them in the past, and nothing is off limits or out of bounds. And of course, nothing. There's no topic that we can't wring out some sort of philosophy from. So, and again, no pressure. You do not have to talk if you don't like. You can sit back and just take in the conversation. You can show up late. You can leave early. If you can't be there physically, we also stream it via Microsoft Teams. So please send us a request on your Microsoft Teams page, DCPC, Dallas College Philosophy Club, and we will accept you. We have over 400 members on the Teams page. And, of course, follow us on social media. We're on Instagram. We got about 300 followers. That's where we make our announcements for what the topic is and other special events throughout the semester. We're also on Twitter and Facebook. That's kind of lagging over there a little, but we just got a new influx of student officers who will be recharging that, from what I'm told. Other than that, circling back around to next week's topic will be anxiety. So on Wednesday, if you like anything that you heard or you want to contribute to the conversation, again, topic will be anxiety this Wednesday. So having said all that, I guess, any final thoughts or, I guess, concluding anecdotes? Have we come around on anxiety? I think I'm going to wear a T-shirt that just says, "I'm anxious" with a smiley face. That should be our merch.
You have to have something like, "I'm anxious, help me," and just see if anybody responds to your T-shirt.
I'm anxious, and that's cool. I'm cool with it. I'm not anxious about my anxiety. Oh, we're so funny. Carlos, any other lingering thoughts or something that maybe you wanted to circle back to?
Actually, no. I think it's very interesting to at least just acknowledge it. So, not that we're just leaving it behind and just let it happen. I do want to continue talking about it, but on another time. But
by the way,
today was very interesting, though. I did enjoy it.
I do want to add on to what Carlos said. There is something just about acknowledging experiences that we have to other people, which, I agree with him. There's just something freeing about being able to just accept a normal experience that everybody has. That sometimes, how many people are going around talking about anxiety? It just normally doesn't happen in everyday conversation. So I really like the comment.
Yeah, I second the comment and those sentiments, Luke. Again, I'm reminded of psychology or psychoanalysis. Oftentimes, which has a lot to overlap, depending on the field, with existentialism. There's something unusual, it seems, about requiring another person who doesn't, know you well outside of the clinical professional environment, and they have to tell you that you're lying to yourself about your feelings. So oftentimes, what will happen is patients are hesitant to admit that they're anxious. Like, I don't have any anxiety. No, I don't have anxiety over that. No, I don't have anxiety over this. And then the goal of the psychologist, the doctor, is to kind of pull it out of you. And it's just like, well, no, you have anxiety over something. And it's just getting you to recognize what emotionally you already know, and maybe bodily you already know, but maybe mentally you cannot accept. Again, it's to put a bow on it, the first step is just accepting the feeling of anxiety that you're experiencing it. But no, that's a good one.
This has been 12-step radio.
Yeah, seriously. But I am a clinical psychologist. No, I'm not. But okay, Jen, anything?
I don't know. I was just going to take it to a psychological level and a bit more like...
Sure.
Because honestly, this has been focused very positively on stuff. But because the word has been so overused in society, by psychological definition, it would be actually a sense of dread.
Sure.
And basically, all of this is for the listeners, not necessarily for, us. So, I don't know, I just wanted to kind of leave it off on a note that, a lot of people who feel anxious, who feel dread and stuff like that, a lot of the time their thoughts are just like, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm not good enough or stuff like that. And that's what makes them anxious. But I just wanted to leave it on a note that it's not about you trying to get yourself better. You don't have to force yourself and speed it up, because that makes you more anxious.
Oh, for sure.
So honestly, just keeping just keep trying, because as long as you're trying, that makes you good enough because you care enough to try.
Yeah, I think that's a very encouraging message, for sure. And again, we're not necessarily chastising people for experiencing anxiety or dealing with it one way or the other. It's just we're questioning the very phenomenon of experiencing anxiety. And so, I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, that there's no necessarily right or wrong way to deal with it, quote unquote. But at the very least, a good start, I think, would be acknowledging it. So I like that.
Yeah, like Jim also bringing up that there's two sides, and And our discussion was focused more on the positive side, and there is a darker side to anxiety that we haven't got into at all. So
Maybe we'll get into it
acknowledging
on
that
Wednesday.
pushes the recognition that the conversation needs to keep going. So thank you. I really like that comment.
Heck yeah. Skyla?
Well, it's, I guess any finishing words would be, what I said, or my input relates back to me and my personal experiences, whereas the audience or the individual, there's no, gosh, I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but everything is different for every individual. Every individual is very unique and special, and there's just so much going on in the individual's lives and such that, everyone else can't begin to fathom. But also, there's so many similarities between each and every one of us. So just acknowledging that, someone may actually be able to relate to you and such, but I also want to bring up that normalizing anxiety and making it not this forbidden word is very important. So that's my
right on.
random thought process.
No, I appreciated all of these. And yeah, Ashok, you have anything you want to say?
I am looking forward to Philosophy Club Wednesday, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about how you guys deal with anxiety. Something we started talking about here, but I didn't get much of it. But what I'm looking forward to really hearing is the existentialists are big on music and the temporal sequence of things, taking things almost one note at a time. I am really interested to hear, hey, do you guys feel more or less anxious when listening to, 16 hours of anime soundtracks back to back? So I hope you guys will come to club and we can talk about some of those experiences.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, okay, so I guess that'll do it, folks. I want to thank my guests, everybody, students, professors alike. Lovely having you all here. This is the Philosophy Club Radio Hour. You are listening to KDUX Web Radio. We are the voice of Dallas College, Richland campus. And continue to check out our other fine programs. I believe we have, again, as I mentioned, Shockwave Dave up next. So kick out the jams, folks. And don't forget to...
Quack. Don't forget to quack.
Don't forget to think about it. So think about it. Yeah, that's the slogan we have for this program. We always end it by going, think about it. You guys want to try? One more in unison?
All right, 1, 2, 3.
Think about it.
See, that's such a low.
See you next time, folks.
All right. There's something about how muted the think about it is that makes it good. After a long discussion of anxiety.